That was actually a video of a footage of what is happening in Indonesia right now, raising awareness to the importance of being aware that gender-based violence exists here in Indonesia. And as mentioned before, there has been a rise in cases reported by the National Commission of Violence Against Women here in Indonesia. Well, because of that, we will return to our previous story later on. But first, I think we have a very special guest coming on with us.
Yes, we do. So the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence is an international campaign to challenge violence against women and girls. The annual event kicks off on November the 25th until December the 10th, coinciding with the Human Rights Day. The National Commission on Violence Against Women reports that cases of violence against women are on the rise, just like you said earlier. Now, how can we bring an end to this phenomenon? We'll find out the answers from writers and activist Kalis Mardiasih. Hello, Kalis. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon. I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me.
That's great. So first of all, can you explain it to us a little bit about gender-based violence, especially among women, and who can be a victim of it?
Okay, basically, gender-based violence consists of 4 forms. The first is verbal abuse, the second is mental abuse, the third is economical abuse, and the fourth is physical abuse. And the 4 of the forms of gender-based violence actually nowadays can be happen offline and also online. And then it can actually happen in family, and then in school, in university, and in public places, in public transportation, and also actually in workplaces. So it can be happen everywhere. And the perpetrators actually is the someone who has to violate the human dignity of women.
You know,
and we also have a new form of gender-based violence, that is online, the online gender-based violence.
Well, Kalis, thank you so much for that opening. As you know, Indonesia currently is mourning the Novia Widyasari case that has been causing public outcries in recent days. And I read what you dedicated, an ode for her, on social media. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, Novia Widyasari has raped and become the victims of forced illegal abortions from her ex-boyfriend, actually. And we are failed to save her lives, and then she committed suicide in the site of her death graveyards. And actually, that is very sad stories for all of us.
Now, Kalis, according to the National Commission on Violence Against Women, in Indonesia alone, there are more than 24,000 recorded cases of violence against women, 10,000 of which are sexual violence. What is the cause? What are the factors behind this figure?
Yes. As a woman and also a gender activist, actually, I don't just see it as the increasing of statistics that are the sad news for us, that reflects how many the gender-based violence happen surround us. But actually, the good news is the increasing of the number of the gender-based violence that are received by Komnas Perempuan show us that more women or more girls finally have courage to report the cases. Yes, and actually they are showed us how the women and the girls nowadays in Indonesia can define what happened to them as sexual violence, as of physical violence, and then finally access the layanan aduan for the sexual violence.
Now, how can gender-based violence affect the victims physically and also mentally?
Yes, the victims of gender-based violence actually suffered a lot of physically and then mentally and also socially. For they suffered physically, it means for the health impacts of their body. They suffered genital pain and genital injuries, and then also uh, penyakit menular seksual like HIV/AIDS from their perpetrators, and also they suffered unwanted pregnancy, they suffered illegal abortion, and it affects their physical condition. And from the mentally side, actually they suffered so many traumas like SD and other mental trauma. And then also from social aspects, actually they difficult to earn their they are failed to access higher education, for example, failed to have access on political science, and also the economic sources, and also the social life, because of the stigmatization from the society for the victims of sexual violence.
So you may have mentioned one of the reasons, but you also mentioned before that it might be a good thing that there are more and more women now brave enough to speak up and report, their violence that has been caused against them towards authorities. But there are still victims out there who are very reluctant or afraid to report this violence. Could you explain to us some factors that could, that could discourage them from actually reporting, aside from, society stigma that you've already mentioned before?
Yeah, actually there are so many risk factors for victims to speak up towards their sexual violence experience, because we know that from the Novia Widyasari cases, actually she has asked help from their support group, for example, from their mother, and also from their family, her uncle, and then her uncle said that the Novia mencoreng nama baik keluarga, or victims of sexual violence in campus and also in public places and in places still become the revictimization, like their persona become as sexual violence nowadays still see as the sexual activity without the understanding of the unsur of the aggressions, and also the attack and the power relation. So I mean the society cannot see the power relations that happen between the victims and the perpetrators of sexual violence. So in this patriarchal world, in this misogyny world, we know that women always seen as the penggoda laki-laki, always seen as the aib and etc. etc. So actually we fight to eradicate the stigma towards women.
Now, Kalis, if we know a person who has been through a terrible experience, how can we help them to speak up? What can we do to encourage them to actually bring this to the public's attention?
Yes. So I think the more important thing than speak up, for example, for digital media that can be publicly without thinking the safety reason of the victims, is the victims actually should access the women crisis center first. Now, after they access the women crisis center, they will be uh, from the women crisis centers, like to advocate their mental and health trauma. They will get the free counselor from the Women Crisis Center. And then the second, they also will be provide law advocates to help them if they want to bring their cases, yeah, to the police, for example, because if the victims just speak up on social media, they are often accused back from the perpetrators or the criminalized from their perpetrators dengan tuduhan pencemaran nama baik. So yeah, because the victims upload the document, for example, the chat document, for example, and they can accuse back from the perpetrators using the UU ITE in Indonesia. So yeah, the most important thing is the victims should be getting help from the law advocate sites and also the psychologists to help their trauma.
Now, Kalis, I know you're very vocal on your social media. I think it's one of the ways for you to fight against gender-based violence. But how do you see the fight against gender-based violence within our society?
Yes, I can say much about this. Anyway, congratulations to commemorate the 16 days of activism to stop gender-based violence for women and also girls in Indonesia. We are still fighting for anti-sexual harassment bills in Indonesia. There were actually, yeah, 10 years, for 10 years we are fight yeah, for this bill. And then I see the solidarity from the women, yeah, the students in university and also the students at school, and our society is increase, yeah, actually the solidarity to speak about their gender equality issues.
You know, Kalis.
And when we talk about, yes.
Sorry, I also have one question that is, you know, just to continue what you were going to state, because from another perspective, though, we know that this is something that can happen anytime, anywhere. How can a woman be prepared to, you know, sometimes we can't avoid it, but are there anything that we can do perhaps to prepare ourselves mentally for it, or however, and men, they have also been starting to, you know, post on social media more awareness of you know, gender-based violence, saying that it's not only a woman's issue, but it's also a men's issue to understand. How can both genders help each other to raise awareness in stopping the violence against women?
Yes, the first thing first for us women, actually that is important for us to understand the definition of the gender-based violence. We should know the forms of the gender-based violence that happen verbally, mentally, and then economically, and also physically, because there are so many women that suffered the gender-based violence, but actually they cannot define that violence that happened to themselves, because they have no clue that that the thing that happened to their self is the type of violence. For example, when their husband said that you are bad wife, you are bitch, and you are useless. So many women out there, so many wives out there still internalize that verbal abuse as, oh yes, I'm a bad wife, yes, I'm a bitch, yes, I'm a useless wife because I'm just, for example, a domestic housewife, for example. So they internalize the violence without knowing that that is violence, for example.
Kalis
And
Mardiasih.
then the second, yes.
Oh, sorry. You still want to continue?
Okay.
The second?
The second actually, the woman that is important for women can be assertive, assertive skill to yourself. So if, for example, your partner or your husband give you verbal abuse or give you mental abuse, you can proceed. You can proceed that thing, and you can say to him that what you do for me, what you do to me, actually is violent.
It's a type
So
of
the
violence.
assertive skill is very important.
Right. Kalis Mardiasih, thank you so much for your insight, because this has been a topic that is ongoing. And of course, we appreciate your continuous fight for stopping and fighting against gender-based violence. Thank you so much for joining us on the 3-Hour News Show, especially for See the Stories. You know, we have had this conversation before in different forms, and now that it has come to the perfect moment, I think it's good that we, look at one story that we have made for you specifically about sexual harassment and sexual